Blue, bubba, sa bibbidi bobbidi boop. Triceratops conquering the world. Alright, not getting sound spikes this time, I hope. Cool. Alright. Custom cities. There's a lot of existing systems that you can use to create really cool and interesting cities and realms randomly. Perilous Wilds in particular comes to mind. But for this, something I find enjoyable is taking a system that doesn't really have a random generator and giving it one. And for that reason, I particularly like doing Oathmark cities. Kind of high magic fantasy setting, and you have a 3D printer and you're running low on models. I can recommend Artisan Guild and Titan Forge. Between them, they use the same kind of model sizes, so you can kind of cut between both of them. And between them, you're going to fill every kind of fantasy race that you could probably imagine. So in doing this, there's a few ways I've worked out doing this randomly. Two of them will create legal armies, and one of them is just, I would call it a narrative method, where just anything goes. You couldn't play the game legally using it, but it does make interesting realms. So I'm going to go into each of these. I might even split it across 3 videos just to shorten the size of them. But the first one is how would you call it? Progressive. Yeah, it's a progressive method. Using this kingdom sheet, rules as written, you start in the center with what your kingdom is, and then you work your way to through the outer rings, adding different territories. This outer ring is actually for gameplay. It's meant for the wider kingdom and things you might want to add to that. I usually just leave it at the first 4, but you do you. You make these however you want to make them. So for the progressive method, you start at level 1 to choose what kind of kingdom you have. You go across to level 2, which is this second ring. And what you'll get here is either the same kingdom with level 1 or 2 building type, or you get a second kingdom. From there you get to level 3, you can have your kingdom with 1 to 3 of your type of kingdom structure, or you can have your second kingdom, or a third kingdom, third capital, but you can have the structures 1 to 2. So you get these progressive waves through your map of getting bigger and bigger buildings. You can always call this the low fantasy method, because the big fantasy beasts that come in the outer rings, you're statistically going to get less of them, because we're going to be doing this randomly rolling dice. And because you're randomly rolling dice, you're more likely to get some of these level 1s and 2s more often than you're going to get these second ones. The second method is, placement. This is also legal. Unlike this one where you're going progressive, you just roll your dice randomly. If I roll a building type that belongs in this outer ring, first up, then I just pop it straight in, and I work my way from there. All you have to do for this one is register that what you're going to get is legally permissible in the rules, which was outlined in the progressive one. This is more your high fantasy. You're very likely to get fantasy creatures of a mix of the different kingdoms, and you can just place them wherever you want. So this is pretty closest to rules as written Oathmark. And then the narrative one is whatever you roll is whatever you get. Still start with a kingdom in the middle, but you could have a dragon next to you. What is it called? High Fell. Just sitting right next to your capital city. Couldn't use this in a gameplay tournament because it's just going to break the like one of my previous made ones was basically Elven Beastmasters, because there was an Elven capital and then every other thing was some kind of beast. And just imagine these, maybe they're like poachers in Africa and they've just got cages and cages of animals that they wheel out to defend themselves when they're pressured. Right, definitely gone too long on me rambling here. So let's do this. Let's make a kingdom. Shut up, Matt. Let's get to work. When you place it on this map, you got 2 methods of doing it. One is figure out your kingdom and then choose a logical site for it. The other one is roll up some dice, decide a random location as you would narrowly, and then use what's there to infer your decision. Like if I started here in these riverlands, I might just automatically place a river because it makes sense to the city to have one there. But for now, I'm just going to randomly roll some dice. So we got a city right here on the blue plane, which is kind of cool because this is where we've been working previously. So this mountain across here, that's where whatever city I'm going to be making is going to be living. So I'll start off looking at that map of the bleak plain. It's about here. So I don't know what this is going to be, but we're going to find out right now. So kingdom sheet. To do this using the progressive method, just using the core rulebook, you have 4 races. You got dwarves, humans, elves, and orcs. But orcs are split into 2. because you can have a Goblin Kingdom or an Orc Kingdom as your first one. So grab your D8, or whatever D you want to work with. You can use D10 and just not count the 10 or the 9. You grab your D8, 1 2 is Dwarves, 3 4 is Humans, 5 6 is Elves, 7 is Goblins, and 8 is Orcs. 2. So this is going to be a Dwarf Kingdom. Okay. If you've seen the Lichton video, this is kind of interesting because the Lich is running around doing all sorts of things here. Like this, maybe this will have nasty consequences. Alright, so now we've got the Dwarf Kingdom here. We're going to switch things up a bit because I could randomly generate something from the Dwarf Kingdom, which is what is likely to happen, but I could also randomly roll another race. So when you are doing this, you take your D10, 1 to 5 is your kingdom, and then 6 to 9 is the respective kingdom. So 6 is Dwarves, 7s would be Humans, 8 would be Elves, 9 would be Goblins and Orcs, and 10 would count as these, the unaligned creatures. So Gargoyles, Bodarks, Dragons, and Sumas, which are basically basilisks. They don't belong to any particular race, they just serve everyone, if you have the money to pay for their allegiance. That's what we're going to do. We're going to grab 2d10s, and I'm going to determine what the first tier 2 buildings are going to be. Okay, so I got 2 Orc and Goblin. It's got to be the capital, because it's in tier 2, and we're doing this progressively. So is it an Orc city or a Goblin city? 1 to 5 it'll be a Goblin city, 6 to 10 it'll be an Orc city. So I got 2 Orc cities, okay. Now when you're doing this, think about this narratively. So I've got a Dwarf Kingdom surrounded by 2 Orc cities. So what's going on here? Are they besieging the Dwarf Kingdom? Are they like deserters? Have these Orcs allied themselves with the Dwarf Kingdoms? You'll figure all of that out as you go along. Oh, and something to note down, because I did say I was going to do this on the map. There's rough hills in the bottom left of this city, so I'm just going to note it down here so I don't forget. Because if it makes sense, I'll add those in. The rough hills giving you access to things like ogres, which doesn't really make sense for a Dwarf Kingdom, but if we're fiddling around with Orcs as well, I see possibilities. Alright, so we go to tier 3. Tier 3 being, I can have any buildings up to 3 from the Dwarves, or I can have anything from 1 or 2 for either of any of the other races. So what have I got? So I got 7, 3, and what was that? Dwarf, Human, and Goblin again. Alright. So let's go back to the book. We'll start with the Dwarf. So I can have 1, 2, or 3 of anything in this list, because they're all capped at 1, 2, or 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 options. So that's straightforward. Roll a d8, and whatever I get is whatever I get. 8, so Moors, which gives me access to a Barghest. Barghests being these ethereal, ghost-like wolves that haunt the frosty moors. That doesn't seem very dwarfy, if I'm being honest. So let's say Moors. Remembering the map, I've got frozen tundra kind of up here, I've got rough hills this way, and I don't know what I've got down here, so maybe put the Moors here on the bottom. What else have I got? I got Human. So I can have Human, but I can only have 1 or 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options. I'm going to roll a d6 and re-roll 6s. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Timber mills, light or heavy catapults. So timber. Gotta move the moors. Yeah, so timber mills. And finally, Orc and Goblins. So for Orc and Goblins, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options. So d6 again. I'm gonna randomly roll what I get. 4. 4 being slave camps, so goblin slaves and goblin slave slingers. Alright. So Dwarf City, surrounded by Orc cities, slave camps, ethereal walls, and lots of timber. So finally, for the last 4, I'm going to have unaligned, that's cool. Dwarf, Orc. Do I have another d10? Come on, d10. I don't, I have a d12. Roll d12. 9. So another Orc. So 2 more Orcs and unaligned, and I got at least 1 Dwarf thing. So now this can be absolutely anything. So I'm going to go back to the Dwarf. Everything on the list is fair game. So anything from the Dwarves, d8, 3, Mountain Passes. Well, I did say I was going to do rough hills. Maybe I'll treat that 9 as rough hills for ogres. So I got, which kind of makes sense with the mountain passes. So if I put the rough hills here, mountain passes, because yeah, I think I got a feel for what's going on here. What else do I get? Unaligned and dwarf, unaligned and orc. So unaligned, we'll do the orc first. Could be anything on the orc list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things. So roll a d10, figure out what it is. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rivers for trolls. Oh, right near the moors. That makes perfect sense. And finally, the unaligned one. 1, 2, 3, 4. What am I going to get for unaligned? 3, a dragon on the high fells. Cool, alright. So at this point, you've got your kingdom. One thing I'm just going to point out doing this is that I know, although it's drawn out this way in concentric rings, you don't have to just leave it there if you don't want to. Like, we're drawing random stuff here. Why do we need to leave it at concentric rings? So when you draw this out, don't be afraid to do something a little bit more custom on your sheet. And because I'm doing this here on these 3 pages, I'm just going to quickly draw one out down here of what my kingdom looks like. I reckon what's happened is the Lich in my Lichdom game made a pact with a bunch of orc shamans to trade him wealth and magic and curses in exchange for some knowledge that they knew, so that the orcs could fight their enemies and the Lich could get what he wanted. I reckon these orc cities are orc nomad camps that have come and used the Lich's rewards to conquer this dwarven kingdom. This offers a couple of weird things, because the orcs are in charge. Best generals you could only get are dwarf generals. But I don't reckon the dwarf generals in this city are going to be dwarves. I think they're going to be like these orc nomads who are wearing the orc stuff, and their increased activations in the rule sets, the ability for them to actually do things in game, is just their sheer arrogance of, yeah, we took an orc city, what of it, we're wearing their stuff, cool. And the orc citizenry that are left alive in the city are actually the turncoats, who have decided, actually it's better for our survival to side with the orcs, rather than try and pick a fight with them. Conversely, the slave camps aren't full of goblin slaves. The slave camps are full of those dwarves who are loyal to the city, and the orcs have taken the dwarves, they've shaved their beards, they've whipped them into submission, and now the slave camps are actually full of broken dwarves. That's very interesting. Like in the mountain passes, they can still be manned by dwarves, but they're dwarves that they're the ones that turned tail and betrayed them. Or you could have it as the mountain passes are not controlled by the dwarf border guard anymore. They're controlled by orcs using their equipment. Or maybe the rangers of the orcs, which again, their increased activation is because they're not your standard war-making orcs. Trolls, Barghists, ogres, they all make sense, it's just part of the orc horde, or paid by the orc horde. But the dragon, again, if you remember the Lich, one of the things that happened to him is that he grew this massive gold hoard. I reckon he probably gave the dragon a bunch of gold, said, you get to fight with me, and I'll use you to sack this dwarven kingdom. Poor kingdom. So the last things we got to decide are who the current ruler is, which I'm guessing is going to be this orc chieftain, and give the kingdom 2 names, because there'll be the dwarf name and the whatever name the orcs have given them. Now you got your Oathmark Kingdom, drawn in a way that I think is a little more interesting than just the circular circles. And now we have all that data that we've gathered from creating the kingdom. We can go back to our regional map for the Bleak Plains and add in a mountain pass. I might actually move this mountain down here. This mountain can turn into the high fells, or maybe not. Just add it back in. It doesn't matter. And we'll add the timber, and we'll run that river, running down the mountains, past the hills, and into that lake. We'll probably start naming the lakes as well, if we wanted to, and the rivers. Now we have our city. We need to just generate some dramatis personae for this kingdom that we've got. So for the current ruler, I'm guessing it's going to be an orc of some description. Now is it going to be male or female orc? There's a question. Yeah, just leave it up to chance. So D6, 1 to 3 it's male, 4 to 6 it's female. Female, alright. So going just to fantasy name generator, I'm gonna get a random female orc name. Sada Cruel Basher. I'm happy with that. And we'll get a random dwarf city. And I'll use the Don John Fantasy Town generator to create the dwarf name for this. Buza-izd. Buza-izd, interesting. And the final thing to do, now that I've got a couple of characters on the page as well, because who knows, that might become relevant in future. Maybe they've got their own little things going on. I'm just going to use the Universal NPC emulator, the Une, which I really love for just making up quick characters. There's a lot of character emulators out there. I just find this one particularly enjoyable. We're going to create a character for Sada Cruel Basher. So to use your emulator, you'd roll a D100 twice for a modifier and a noun. So we're going to figure out who Sada was. Obviously she's the current ruler, but what was she before this? 58. A privileged. Okay, so chieftain's daughter, maybe? 10. A privileged thug. Yeah. Yep. 100%. So someone that would just learn how to fight, get into fights, and if ever there was any problems, well, she's the chieftain's daughter. So in come the thugs. I like to give these characters 3 motivations just to flesh out the characters. So we got 31. Guard. Oop, that one's cocked. Guard the Forsaken. Okay. It could be her people. Like maybe they are orcs in a very harsh environment. Maybe she wants better for them, hence attacking the dwarves. 1247. Progress slavery. Yep. Okay, that tracks. Not a lot of redeeming features for Sada. 87. Oop, no, that was a 6. 87, 86. Compose lies. Oh, yes, that is. So this is not a good person. Just a thug. Takes what she wants. She does have the best interests, I reckon, for her tribe, but that's about it. Not even other orcs. She's just out for herself first, and then out for a tribe afterwards. What's her bearing? So 2 D100s, 76, and 9. Mysterious conundrum. Okay, works with the lies. Maybe she enjoys putting people in, like, she's a little bit of a psychopath or a sociopath. She likes putting people in situations where they might need to compromise their values, and she uses that to get what she wants. Okay, so that's fallen dwarven city of Buza-izd. Should probably come up with a little organ for that. Yeah, screw it. With the current ruler Sada Cruel Basher, a privileged thug who wants to guard the Forsaken, which she views as her own people, progress slavery, compose lies, and likes to speak in conundrums. That is the first method of generating random legal Oathmark Kingdoms.
What boy?